Bom dia a todos, a todas. É com muita alegria que a Faculdade de Direito de Ribeirão Preto, em conjunto com o CEDIRE, o Centro Brasileiro de Estudos, de Estudos em Direito e Religião, coordenado pelo professor Rodrigo Vitorino, que me está acompanhando aqui nesse vídeo, nós queremos recebê-los, acolhê-los a todos para esse nosso 5º Seminário Internacional de Direito e Religião da Faculdade de Direito e Religião da USP, e o 3º em parceria com o CEDIRE. Nós temos uma programação intensa, mudamos um pouco o formato do evento deste ano, privilegiando as falas dos conferencistas, com mais tempo para os conferencistas e menos conferencistas, para que possamos aproveitar melhor as informações e os conteúdos transmitidos por cada um dos conferencistas. Temos uma programação bem intensa e tivemos algumas alterações, como nós teremos ocasião de apresentar agora para vocês. Algumas pequenas alterações, na verdade, enxugamos um pouco o evento por necessidade dos próprios conferencistas. Então, nós vamos ter a programação no dia de hoje, dia 19, e amanhã. Eu peço que se transmita a programação, por gentileza. Aqui nós temos, então, no dia 19 de setembro, a Conferência Inaugural, a Liberdade e Religião de Minorias Religiosas, o caso paquistanês, com o professor Said Mobem, que vai ser apresentado na sequência. Às 14h30, nós temos os grupos de trabalho, que vai ser por meio de um link exclusivo, o Meet, enviado aos participantes. Amanhã, 20 de setembro, nós teremos a Conferência sobre Liberdade Religiosa e Coesão Social na Nova Caledônia e na Guiana Francesa, com a professora doutora Florence Faberon, da Universidade da Guiana, e também ligada à Universidade de Clermont-Auvergne, na França. Temos a conferência sobre a intersecção entre a liberdade de religião ou crença e os direitos das mulheres, o papel das mulheres, a doutora Fernanda Samartim Carrasco. E às 14 horas nós temos a conferência A Proteção Internacional do Direito das Minorias Religiosas, com o professor Dr. Rodrigo Vitorino de Souza Alves, aqui presente. E às 15h30, a conferência de encerramento com o Dr. Fernand de Varenne, relator especial das Nações Unidas para assuntos de minorias pelo Conselho de Direitos Humanos. Ele vai falar sobre as ameaças à liberdade e à não discriminação, a crescente vulnerabilidade global das minorias religiosas. Esse programa consta do nosso site da Faculdade de Direito de Ribeirão Preto, e ele indica o amadurecimento significativo desse seminário, que já está na sua 5ª edição. A cada ano nós temos escolhido os temas específicos, e esse ano nós tratamos das minorias religiosas, de um modo geral, que é um conceito bastante amplo e com várias conotações. E essas conotações nós vamos tentar abarcá-las, não só nas conferências, como também nos trabalhos expostos. Então, a todos, muito obrigado, em meu nome pessoalmente, meu nome como vice-diretor da faculdade, eu acolho a todos. Professor Rodrigo, muito obrigado pela presença, pela colaboração, e passo para você a palavra.
Professor Márcio Ponzilacqua, para mim é uma grande satisfação poder participar aqui desta abertura. Um bom dia a todos, a todas que estão nos acompanhando. O meu nome é Rodrigo Vitorino, eu sou professor da Faculdade de Direito da Universidade Federal de Uberlândia e também atuo no CEDIRE, no Centro Brasileiro de Estudos em Direito e Religião, como pesquisador líder. E, para mim, é de fato uma grande satisfação poder apoiar o professor Márcio Ponzilacqua e a Faculdade de Direito de Ribeirão Preto, da Universidade de São Paulo, para a realização deste evento que eu digo que já é um evento tradicional e que se posiciona como um evento de excelência no campo do direito e religião no Brasil. Como foi dito pelo professor Márcio, houve esse avanço a cada ano, né, em relação à organização do evento, que já está na sua 5ª edição e contando para essa realização com a participação de palestrantes de outros países, né, e com a apresentação de trabalhos também de pessoas de diferentes partes do Brasil. O tema é um tema da mais alta relevância, né, porque falar das questões de minorias não é fundamental, tratar das questões das vulnerabilidades, né, e nessa interação com o ambiente cultural e religião, isso com certeza proporcionará discussões muito ricas ao longo destes dias de evento, né. Então, como o professor Márcio colocou, houve alguns ajustes na programação, né, então teremos aí 2 dias, não é, professor Márcio, de intensas reflexões e discussões e aprofundamentos sobre o tema proposto, né? Temos esses 2 eixos temáticos, né? Ambiente cultural, liberdades religiosas e minorias étnico-raciais, e ambiente cultural, liberdades religiosas e minorias de gênero. Então, para nós, da comissão organizadora, é uma satisfação muito grande contar com a presença de todas as pessoas que nos acompanham e que também participarão na condição de palestrantes, de moderadores, com a apresentação de trabalhos vindas do Brasil e de diferentes partes do mundo. Então, desejamos um excelente evento a todos e a todas. Professor Márcio, eu também farei aqui uma introdução em inglês, não é isso?
Por favor, isso mesmo.
Para aqueles que estão nos acompanhando de outros países, então, como é um evento internacional, então é importante fazer esse registro, né, para que todos possam compreender. Então, vou mudar aqui a chave, professor Márcio, para o inglês, né? Então, a very good morning to everyone. My name is Rodrigo Vitorino. I am a professor at the Faculty of Law at the Federal University of Uberlândia and lead researcher at the Brazilian Center for Studies in Law and Religion. For me, it's a great satisfaction to support Professor Márcio Ponzilacqua, who is professor at the Faculty of Law of the Ribeirão Preto at the University of São Paulo, for holding this event, which is an event of excellence in the field of law and religion in Brazil. In the sense, the postgraduate program in law of the Faculty of Law of Ribeirão Preto of the University of São Paulo, the Center for Studies in Law and Religion, CEDIRE, and the Study and Research Group in Sociology of Socio-Environmental Law and Rights welcomes to the 5th International Seminar on Law and Religion of the Faculty of Law of Ribeirão Preto of the University of São Paulo, with the theme Cultural Environment, Religion, and Minority Rights, which is being held between the 19th and the 20th of September 2023 via the digital platform of the Faculty of Law of Ribeirão Preto, The 5th International Seminar on Law and Religion has 2 thematic areas: cultural environment, religious freedom, and ethnic racial minorities, and cultural environment, religious freedom, and gender minorities. For us, the organizing committee, it is a great satisfaction to have the presence of all the people who is accompanying us and who will also participate as speakers, moderators, and presenting papers from Brazil and different parts of the world. We wish everyone an excellent event. Thank you very much. Professor Márcio.
Prestigia, e só lembrando que, embora nós tenhamos transformado em 2 dias de evento, o conteúdo foi mantido. Então, não houve prejuízo para o conteúdo. Todas as conferências foram mantidas e nós, então, teremos o evento integralmente nesses 2 dias. Nosotros también queremos agradecer a todos los presentes, los de lengua española y castellano, que nos acompañan en este evento, que es un evento en parcería con la Universidad Federal de Uberlândia, especialmente con el Centro Brasileño de Estudios de Derecho y Religión. Y nosotros tenemos una programación intensa que sigue un poco lo que ha habido en los otros años, en los años anteriores, cuando tuvimos muchas buenas ocasiones de conferencias magistrales con personas especializadas en el tema del derecho a religión. En este año hablamos sobre el derecho de las minorías religiosas y para nosotros vamos a recibirlos todos con mucho gusto, con mucha alegría y sean todos bienvenidos. Então, muito obrigado, Rodrigo, obrigado a todos. E agora encerramos esse momento de abertura e às 9 horas contamos com a presença de todos para a conferência do professor Said Mobem. Até mais.
Até breve.
Até breve. Alô? Tadeu?
Professor, a gente está online, mas o Said acho que se confundiu e saiu aqui da sala, ele saiu da transmissão.
Eu vou mandar de novo para ele.
Tá. Eu vou colocar
nós já estamos online? Já está transmitindo?
Ele voltou. Tá transmitindo, estamos online.
Ecco. Mi sentite?
Sì. Grazie, Shahid Moben. Shahid Moben per loro partecipazione. Aqui está o professor Shahid Moben, do Paquistão, que vive na Itália. O professor, ele agora é professor de Antropologia Filosófica e Metafísica na Pontifícia Universidade Urbaniana e trabalha em um projeto de pesquisa sobre o problema filosófico do tempo em Edmund Husserl. É membro e secretário-geral do Instituto Fenomenológico Italiano em Roma, fundador da Associação de Cristãos Paquistaneses na Itália. O professor vai fazer para nós um panorama da perspectiva fenomenológica da liberdade religiosa, com acento no caso paquistanês. Siamo molto grati e onorati con vostra presenza, professore Shahid, per accettare questa invitazione e siamo qui per un seminario internazionale che si trova nella quinta edizione con conferenzisti di diversi luoghi del mondo. E adesso professor Shahid vai illustrare con suo conhecimento questo momento per noi importante e di apertura di questo seminário. Então, o professor Shahid vai passar para nós, vai transmitir algo das suas pesquisas, do seu conhecimento, ele que é professor na Universidade Urbaniana, uma das mais importantes de Roma. E já vou passar de pronto a palavra ao professor Shahid para que ele faça as suas exposições. Può iniziare quando volete, professor Shahid. Grazie tanto per vostra presenza.
Allora, prima di tutto voglio ringraziare il professore Marzio, che molto gentilmente mi ha invitato, professor Marzio Ponzilacqua, e specialmente per questa ospitalità anche della facoltà del diritto. Non conosco molto bene il portoghese brasiliano, per cui mi scusate la pronuncia. Facoltà di diritto di Ribeirão, Preto, e dell'Università di San Paolo. Thank you very much, Professor Marzio, for this very valuable moment for me to share some ideas. As I was told by Professor Marzio, I can give a talk in English. So want to thank the University of São Paulo and the Faculty of Law for this invitation and for this space, philosophical space centered on the argument of state, law, and human rights in Egyptine, and Professor Angela Alice Bello, who Professor Marzio also knows well, but in particular with a look on the context and situation of Pakistan. That's a country where I come from, and it came into being in 1947, and later on I will explain a little more. So it's a corner in Brazil in this particular moment on Pakistan, with the Pakistani philosopher, if I can say so. So the title of my talk is State, Law and Human Rights in Egyptine, and a confrontation with Angela Alice Bello. In the present philosophical reflection, I would use a method called phenomenological archaeology, coined by Angela Alice Bello, to investigate the reality of what human being is and her communal dimension in a state, its nature of laws and essential human rights. These phenomenological analyses start with a reading of an investigation concerning the state, and there's a very important book of Edith Stein which I want to show. It's a very good translation because the original is in German. It's a text translated also in English by Edith Stein, also known, she was also a nun, so she is known as Sister Teresa Benedicta of the Cross, a Carmelite nun. The reflections, teachings, and example of life of the two women philosophers mentioned above are a concrete witness not only to read through the situation of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, my land of origin, which came into being in 1947 as a sovereign state and re-established in 1971, but also to see into the depth of faith of the Christians living in a country where Islamic majority is of 95%. Christians in Pakistan are rather a younger reality as their nation as well, even if there are relative evidences of its antique presence in what once was the Indian subcontinent, which is growing with fervor and zeal in a context of evident contradictions. Even if there is a national constitution, which by its nature is supposed to apply the principles of equality, right of full citizenship, and the exercise of the fundamental civil freedoms. But as a matter of fact, it does not happen in the case of religious minorities in the territorial individuality. That's the expression Edith Stein uses for a nation. Focusing on my personal commitment to help Christians in Pakistan, the personal examples of a profound vision to develop Christian life of Bishop Anthony Lobo of the Diocese of Islamabad Rawalpindi and of Cardinal Joseph Coutts, Archbishop Emeritus of the Archdiocese of Karachi. I would like to underline the factual analysis of the needs of the mission and its challenges in the anthropological picture which characterizes the Pakistani society. In several occasions, Edith Stein's thought and phenomenological perspective has been a terrain of confrontation to comprehend and to get deeper into the possibilities of interreligious and intercultural dialogue, in particular with Islam, that is a 95% of local people, Hinduism 2%, Sikhism less than 1%, Parsis, Baha'i, and Judaism in Pakistan. In this direction, the study seminars guided through, together with Angela Alice Bello in the Pakistani universities, and for the teachers of the Catholic schools in the cities of Islamabad, Rawalpindi, and Lahore, have underlined the basis of the essential structure of human being, which can be a point of encounter among the civilizations and religions to start constituting the process of just peace and not just war. These possibilities of confrontation with the above mentioned bishops and through them with the teachers of the schools and local universities provided the space for formative dialogue with the priests, nuns, laymen, and women of the local church who are involved in sustainable relationships with the non-Christian communities in several areas of the national society. Among the lay people, a meaningful name is that of the Federal Minister for Religious Minorities, a Catholic, Shabazz Clement Bhatti, a Catholic politician with a wider vision and who has defended at the cost of his life the right to equal citizenship of the religious minorities in the positive law and natural law in respect of the Constitution of Pakistan. In particular, philosophical anthropology based on the phenomenological analysis of Edith Stein as an instrument of philosophical investigation of the reality of mission in Pakistan has put into evidence the Christ-centered foundation of the human dignity, the role of the women in the church and in the society, the right of equal citizenship with relative rights and obligations towards the state community, which is co-founded by Christians, and where they are not aliens just because they exercise a faith which is brought to them by Western missionaries and European in particular. Alice Bellow highlights that in the younger years of Stein, she was involved in the feminist movements and participated actively in the local politics. When she realized the incoherence of the political parties, she took a distance from it. But in this manner, she had a closer experience of this dimension of the communitarian life, which requires constancy to actualize one's ideals and proposes a continuous constructive activity of connections, relationships based on legalization, with an end to build a spiritual community on which a state can be founded and which is present factually on a recognized geographical territory. In this sense, Edith Stein delineates the essential map of a state and its relationships. In particular, after her personal experience of the First World War, which became a fruitful historical moment to see the relationships of several states which united themselves for their own ideals and organized themselves to protect and to promote their own interests. And I would underline that they were, in particular, interests of some individuals, which were far from the defense of human person and his or her dignity as such. The countries, states, the communities, the masses, the associations are essentially composed of their single individual members who have their own essential structure as human beings. And the second volume of Ideas 2 of Husserl delineates very well the essential structure of human being, which is also then developed later on by Edith Stein. The essential individual reality of each human being presents itself in a complex and stratificated way. The three human dimensions, physical, psychic, and spiritual in the sense of Geist, the intellective acts of human being, and the free will, justify the composition of the diverse human associations like masses, society, and community. The masses are groups of people without a uniting motivation, as a unity with its own identity, whereas the national or global societies are the groups of people or persons with their own ethnic, linguistic, political, and religious identities, and where persons can coexist, keeping their own cultural and historical diversities. The associative communities, including state, be the family, religion, or culture oriented, have their own structure, constitutive configuration, and motivation, which are referenced for their common identity and union. Each single member of this community is recognized, participates, and contributes according to his or her own possibilities to its development, because where there are individual rights of belonging to a community, there are also duties and obligations by law or by birth, because it is not only the community which has to take care of its members, but also the member citizens and residents have their responsibilities. In the present globalized societies, formation of younger generations can open new paths for socio-cultural integration of their member citizens. In the case of a state as a form of community, the reciprocal rights and duties are essentially present in its constitution, which as essential constitutive motivation provides space for freedom of conscience, opinion, and belief, so that there is space for individual and communitarian creativity, which can allow cultural, economic, and ethical development of a state. Among several living experiences, or the German word used by Husserl and Stein is Erlebnisse, religious living experience is of fundamental importance in the human history and the cultural activities, or in the constitution of a community, be it tribal, ethnic, or political, as in the case of the formation of a state. Religious living experience, being the highest possible for the human being, is easily exposed to misunderstanding or misunderstandings and partial interpretations. Each individual is deeply touched in his or her religious living experience, and one's faith or belief is an individual or communitarian expression which can manifest at sentimental or emotional way in a human being who is member of a community, which is person of persons. This free choice of faith or belief is rooted in the supreme good, which necessitates a continuous care and a responsible guide for its growth. Religious sentiment acts in a powerful motivational way, and for this reason its discernment and its evaluation are the sieve through which the religious experience or religious living experience can be considered in itself. At speculative level, and its manifestation in the social and relational lives of human beings, even when they belong to a community of state. Stein's philosophical contribution does not stop at the analysis of the physical and psychic dimension of the human being, but she goes deeper and individuates the spirit, the dimension of Geist, spirit, with its intellective acts and free will. According to Alice Bello, the reality of human being, which transcends the physical dimension, is the one which inhabits the interior dimension and has its own living experiences, which flow in the living body. The three dimensions, physical, psychic, and spiritual, are overcome by the principle of identity, which is present and manifests itself, and I will use Husserl's expression, and that is manifests itself in the deep of the bottomless deep. Religious living experience cannot be reduced to a mere sentimentalism or fleeting emotions, since the reality with capital R in its wholeness transcends human being and is the source of human person. Stein finds the traces of this presence speculatively and in her experience when she reads the interior castle of Saint Teresa of Avila. The phenomenological analysis of political dimension of the formation of a state, which is fruit of a decision of a community composed of a variety of identities, for example, ethnic, cultural, political, linguistic, and religious, can take us to a reconsideration or to a continuous reading of the three dimensions, physical, psychic, and spiritual, of the community, which has formed a state. In rigorous terms, a state does not have its own psychic dimensions. Even if its citizens and some groups which compose it have formed some associations, etc., can relate with the state nation in a psychic way or through psychic living experiences. Birth of a state occurs when a community is gathered around the ideals of a group of persons who maintain and nourish essentially also their psychic dimension through spiritual motivation. So, but it's the spirit which gives the ideals or the motivation to form a state, and through strong dynamics of union which can transform the masses into a community with its scope and motivations. It's not possible to establish a state only by occupying a territory or piece of land as a stable and concrete reference, even if it might have open, delimited, or porous borders. An example of porous borders is Durand line between Pakistan and Afghanistan. But at a minor level, it is also with Iran and India, because these are other neighboring countries of Pakistan. In the case of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, its founder, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, a Shiite Ismaili Muslim, is a sect into a sect, who studied jurisprudence in the West and married Ratan Bai Petit of Parsi belief and not a Muslim, had rather a liberal and secular perspective of state. In this regard, his official discourse to the Constituent Assembly of the 11th of August 1947 is exemplary, when the nation was composed of East Pakistan, which later in 1971 became Bangladesh, and of West Pakistan, which later on, because of Islamic radicalization, is transformed into the Islamic Republic of Pakistan. Bangladesh, going back to its constitutional secular spirit, not only obtained its autonomy in the international panorama, but improved its state by weakening or eliminating the radical and extremist elements. Among the three territorial individualities, which are India, East Pakistan, and West Pakistan, which were born on the 14th and the 15th of August 1947 from the British Raj, only the first two maintain the secular constitution and state till today. In the above-mentioned discourse, Jinnah, the founder of Pakistan, declared that the state of Pakistan will be without ethnic, racial, religious, and linguistic interferences. But these ideals, which united the most diverse communities under the same flag, lost their substantial realization 1 year after the creation of the country, when its founder died in unclear circumstances on the 11th of September 1948. In this way, the unifying motivation which had transformed the country into one community, even if the East and West Pakistan were at a distance of more than 1,000 kilometers, was not anymore present, and the radical Islamic movement in very little time eliminated also the successor of Jinnah, the aristocrat Nawab Liaquat Ali Khan. He too was a strong supporter of the centrality of Islamic sentiment, and he was milestone for one religious orientation of the country, which was at that time a multicultural, multi-religious state or country. In this way, the country and state of Pakistan is oriented towards a religious radicalism, abandoning its pluralistic origins. The succession of the military governments, which came into being in the name of political and economic corruption of the political parties, gave origin to the religious fundamentalist fringes, which have penetrated the most diverse state institutions, including education and its national academic curriculum. On the Asian Southeast chessboard, Pakistan is at a strategic position to face the emerging powers and markets in the area. But at the same time, it's a necessary partner to deal with international and global terrorism. The Islamic Republic of Pakistan, with the acquisition of nuclear powers, has a meaningful role in the international politics of the West and Eastern powers. In the recent armed conflict between Russia and Ukraine, the bilateral relations of Pakistan with Russia and China can become lack of balance to maintain fundamental equilibrium for peace in the Southeast Asia. But at the moment, getting deeper into this argument is not relevant for the present philosophical reflection. The political life and the survival of the state in a contemporary globalized world, and the identity of the territorial individualities considered countries by Stein, are in a continuous transformation in their constitution and in their territorial dimensions. In the human history, the changes in the structures of states, society, community, and movements have always occurred, and they cannot be avoided even in the future. These changes are an index of the spiritual tendencies of the human beings who reside there, and of their transformations. In a globalized context of human societies, no country can remain fully autonomous and isolated for economic and cultural motivations. Even more today, in the third millennium, we feel that all the countries in the world are interdependent. Immigration and integration are very important phases of the human movement on the planet Earth. In future, it might be also towards other adventures beyond, which require improvement in the national and international laws to safeguard the human life and dignity. But at the same time, the history, tradition, and culture of each country needs safeguards and means of formation for the new residents or new citizens. The processes of continuous transformation in a country will remain solid in a culture of openness towards the other. Each territorial individuality, country, state, needs a firm foreign policy to satisfy its need for the style and standard of life, in particular after the impact of industrialization also in the public sphere. This requires more elaborate natural resources according to the variety of the public demand. The two governing state entities, Ministry of Commercial and Economic Affairs and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, which deal with economic development and diplomatic relations, are of fundamental importance, not only for the recognition and survival of a state, but they can be an instrument of creating means and places of interreligious and intercultural encounters. Because each state is constituted with its own history of people, ethnic groups, linguistic traditions, faiths, beliefs, and conceptions of human life. These places of encounter of the differences can give long-term economic advantages and bring the people together, and bringing the people together can constitute processes of just peace, avoiding just war, and related conflicts among the nations as a concrete and really desirable horizon in prospect. Human experience of encounter with the other can individuate elements in common to constitute harmony among the peoples and countries. The constitution of harmony is one of the main themes which guided the philosophical developments of its time. And that's what I think the world today needs also, to look for the means to investigate the possibilities of the process of peace building. Dialogue, also the institutional one, is realized by those who represent the institutions. And for this reason, their formation, if it is centered on the human dignity and is in search of the common elements which unite and can build peace, then it can sustain peace among peoples and can avoid conflicts and wars. Each conflict and war among the peoples and persons begins not only to defend their borders and national interests, but it is also an instinctive reaction to maintain their own identity and dignity constituted politically. No conflict or war can realize peace and justice, and none of the aggressive decisions can delineate a true democratic development. Until the individual persons in a national society do not feel the need for a norm rooted in their culture, history, and deep identity, an external model of state or government, even if democratic, will not develop a community which is a nation or a state. The concrete examples in this sense are the Western democracies with their own millennial history, in which citizenship, full human dignity, civil and political freedoms have been acquired with time and drastic changes at home. The right to vote for women and their professional careers, also in the politics, are quite a recent changes, also in the industrially developed West. The countries with tribal or religious social orientation need more time and openness to welcome the Western principles and values of democracy, which for them might be quite alien and external. And that's also the problem of transporting Western conception of democracy through several means which are possible for human influence on other countries or also on other cultures. Democracy should come from within the people as idea as it developed also in the human history of the West. Unless it is felt as their inner need, there are going to be disastrous consequences, and one of them is international terrorism. The economic development, well-defined and protected borders of a state do not make it a community of communities with its own national identity. Civil and political freedoms are fundamental for it, and they are born from a vision, nourished in a cultural and historical place of what human being and the world are. Human person is the fundamental component to constitute a state community and is a principal agent in its governability as a governed subject and as the subject who governs. For these new spaces which are born in the definition of the national societies, Stein, in the paragraph entitled Summary Concerning the Fabric of the State, underlines the reality which can govern the decisions by the state taken by those who represent it. And I will just quote the last part of this quotation of Stein, because in the process of policy making, which is the spirit which guides those who are supposed to not only evaluate the policies, but those who are supposed to implement the policies of a nation. So Stein highlights which spirit, and there is a danger from which a human being can go through, and that's what she highlights in her text on page 102 and 103. And she says, in as much as that spirit gains influence over policy, an outsider can also make the state subservient to his purposes. And the outsider can be God or the Satan with equal ease. Let me go to the conclusions. In the conclusion of this philosophical reflection, one can have clear the personal challenge of Stein, which is central in the phenomenological investigation of Alice Bello, to live deeply and coherently the lives dedicated to the search of truth, known as Jesus Christ. This truth, lived in the life of Saint Teresa Benedicta of the Cross, can continue to illuminate peoples, and in particular Christians, in the lands of mission. In this perspective, the work of intergovernment, interstate institutions, and the spaces of education are essential in the global world as a unique community, and they are necessary for their own identity to maintain fundamental equilibrium in their local national contexts. This sovereignty of a state cannot remain indifferent to the full recognition of citizenship of its members, and the citizens who compose it as members or residents on its territory, or also as someone who belongs to this state community and resides abroad, has a duty and the right to contribute to his/her country of origin and the country of residence following the norms of law and respecting the socio-cultural norms in the recognition of the reciprocal human dignity and freedom. And in this regard, the recognition of full citizenship. For example, in Pakistan, the non-Muslim citizens of the country cannot be elected prime minister of a country or cannot become president of Pakistan, leave alone many other dimensions of discrimination and persecution. And let's talk of the citizen of Pakistan in the language of law. Thank you. I cannot hear you.
Thank you,
Hi.
Shahid,
Now I hear.
for your very clear exposition.
For the lack of time, I try to shorten it a little. Otherwise, I would have spoken all 1 hour.
Okay,
But let's give time for the question and answer, and I might say something more.
Noi non abbiamo adesso alcuna questione. Se voi volete parlare sobre alguna cosa che vede importante, si può parlare.
Essenzialmente ho detto tutto.
Sì, io vado a fare una sintesi di vostra, perché abbiamo un problema di traduzione simultanea di YouTube. Io vado a fare una sintesi dopo in portoghese e dopo possiamo finire em questo momento. Aos participantes, nós tivemos a brilhante exposição do professor Shahid, que nos falou sobre a perspectiva da dimensão religiosa, da liberdade religiosa. Edith Stein, na fenomenologia, Edith Stein é uma filósofa que segue a linha de Edmund Husserl. Então, ele nos mostrou como que essa perspectiva de Edith Stein ela está baseada na própria concepção que temos da comunidade-estado. Edith Stein trabalha a comunidade-estado como sucedânea das outras comunidades, e ali o Estado deve potencializar a identidade da pessoa ao máximo, e inclusive a sua liberdade religiosa. Depois o professor Shahid nos apresentou algumas particularidades, algumas peculiaridades da Ásia, onde está situado o Paquistão, e de Bangladesh, as circunstâncias geopolíticas que ali interferem na liberdade religiosa, as questões locais de governos, e como que, por vezes, há tensões e desafios bastante intensos no campo da liberdade religiosa. Mas que Edith Stein e a sua fenomenologia nos ajudam a compreender as dimensões da pessoa e as obrigações do Estado para esse amplo desenvolvimento da pessoa. O vídeo seguirá gravado e as pessoas que tiverem interesse poderão depois fazer uso dele para também uma tradução mais apurada, mais específica dos termos utilizados, e é isso que nós temos para a exposição. Professor Shahid, nós siamo molto ringraziati con vostra presenza, con vostra esposizione. Lei ci ha presentato vari elementi che sono poco conosciuti tra noi, Brasile, della situazione del Pakistan e anche dell'Asia e della congiuntura sociopolitica che interferi alla luce della prospettiva fenomenologica di Stein, che apre un panorama molto importante di comprensione della persona umana e della obbligazione, del dovere di Stato di fare il desenvolvimento della maturità della persona. Grazie per questo momento. Se vuole parlare qualcosa, noi mi sembra che non abbiamo adesso nessuna domanda. Il video rimanerà in questo momento in YouTube per persone che vogliono capire meglio le loro esposizioni, perché è una lingua che molta gente conosce in Brasile, però non tanto. E per questo momento ho fatto una piccolo resumo, una piccola sintesi di questa esposizione. Grazie mille.
Grazie, specialmente a lei. Se vuole posso anche parlare in italiano, non so se qualcuno capisce qualcosa di più. Se sapevo avrei fatto anche relazione in italiano, però va bene. È importante anche, diciamo, aprire, perché inglese, diciamo, raggiunge molti angoli, ecco, del mondo. In questa stessa direzione della riflessione che ho fatto sul Stato, diritto e diritti umani, ma il mio tentativo è quello di portare i popoli vicini, promuovendo anche una cultura dell'armonia, che era il punto principale nel pensiero della Stein, ma penso che anche proprio questo è a livello della natura umana, quello che cerca è essere costruttivo, essere positivo e andare all'incontro con l'altro, anche se diverso in etnia, in razza, in cultura, nella storia, religione, credenza politica o qualsiasi cosa. I punti per conflitto ne possiamo trovare tanti, però la cosa più importante secondo me è quello che diceva anche il Papa Giovanni Paolo II nel suo testo Varcare la soglia della speranza, che quando il giornalista Mestori gli chiede: ma se Dio è uno, perché tante religioni, no? E il Papa dice: io mi sorprenderei se ci fosse solo una, però in questo momento noi che stiamo ormai, diciamo, bel po' di persone sulla Terra, un numero che qualche millennio fa l'umanità non avrebbe nemmeno sognato, e abbiamo il dono di essere creati da Dio a sua immagine e somiglianza, e abbiamo la presenza di Dio che ognuno di noi può riconoscere questa verità tramite la ricerca, ovviamente con la sua cultura, con la sua storia, le opportunità, no? Che uno ha. In questa direzione la riflessione che ho sviluppata ultimamente è questo testo, che è la questione del essere finito e essere infinito, pubblicato dalla nostra università, e il sottotitolo è Questioni metafisiche e nosologiche tra Occidente e Oriente, dove io tratto proprio questo aspetto. Come lei diceva, no, professor Mobin parla, viene dal Pakistan, sta a Roma, è un contesto, diciamo, suo di provenienza del Pakistan e l'Asia. Voi in questo momento siete nell'altra parte del mondo, no? Tra virgolette, l'America, no? Latino America, Brasile. A livello geografico c'è stato questo momento di condivisione su ciò che è presente proprio un altro lato del mondo rispetto a dove siete voi, che sarebbe l'Asia. Però ciò che ci unisce è questo desiderio della conoscenza. La conoscenza è lo strumento per non solo ricercare la verità, ma anche per comprenderla. E per questo l'umanità in ogni momento storico e in ogni cultura ha cercato la verità e l'ha riconosciuto, però allo stesso momento l'ha espresso in modi diversi. Per cui gli elementi in comune sono quelli che possono essere utili per costruire armonia, e stessa armonia che può anche costruire i processi della pace giusta. Grazie.
Grazie professore per queste chiarificazioni, per questa esposizione finale. Io vado a fare una piccola traduzione di questo che ti ha detto, perché soltanto perché noi abbiamo preferito in inglese, perché è più comune anche, però per la traduzione automatica purtroppo non ho potuto, perché YouTube c'è un umore proprio e non ha fatto la traduzione simultanea, però l'italiano è più prossimo del portoghese, può essere che la gente capisce meglio. O professor Said falou, inclusive, ele evidenciou de novo o elemento da harmonia nos textos de Edith Stein. Então, existem conflitos, mas o que deve se buscar nas relações é justamente as convergências, as aproximações e a possibilidade de existência comum e conexa entre as pessoas e harmônica entre as pessoas. Inclusive, ele citou uma situação com o Papa João Paulo II, quando as pessoas diziam para ele, porque se Deus é um só, porque temos tantas religiões? E aí o Papa respondeu que o contrário é que seria surpreendente, porque há uma diversidade, as pessoas são diversas, mas mesmo na diversidade as pessoas se conectam com elementos que são mais ou menos universais. E ele falou sobre o livro publicado, inclusive, e traduzido por eles, né, se não me engano, na Universidade Urbaniana, sobre ser finito e ser infinito, e que nesse contexto de Edith Stein mostra justamente essa necessidade de nós buscarmos essa convivência pacífica, esse reconhecimento do outro e essa aproximação. Grazie, professore.
Grazie a lei.
È un piacere molto grande. Piacere molto grande di trovarti qui e aspetto in breve che siamo insieme per una occasione presenziale. Grazie.
Grazie a voi.
Muito obrigado a todos, e temos um encontro marcado amanhã às 9 da manhã. Até mais. Tchau.